for another very important keynote, I would like to invite on stage OECD Secretary General Mathias Cormann. Welcome.
Mr. President, distinguished guests, colleagues, friends all, thank you very much for the invitation to make some observations at this, the 21st International Anti-Corruption Conference. This conference is always a valuable opportunity to bring together all those actively engaged in the fight against corruption. Policymakers establishing laws and procedures that respond to the evolving landscape of corruption risks, law enforcers looking at new approaches, including the use of digital tools and AI to detect and prosecute corruption, civil society and journalists providing the transparency and accountability that is so fundamental to our democratic systems, and in a year when 76 countries globally are holding elections. And of course, businesses implementing safeguards and controls both internally and across your supply chains. For the OECD, the fight against corruption is fundamental to the preservation of our shared values: democracy, the rule of law, the protection of human rights, and the effective application of market-based economic principles. Higher levels of integrity and lower levels of corruption are associated with higher foreign direct investment, stronger economic growth, and hence more and better jobs, higher incomes, and better living standards. The good news is that there is a clear international commitment to tackling corruption. However, the other news is that there is also still so much more that needs to be done. 2/3 of OECD countries now have an anti-corruption or integrity strategy. The OECD Anti-Bribery Convention, which sets the global standard for effective international efforts to tackle transnational bribery, is now in its 25th year, and it has reached a total of 46 signatory countries, with several others in the process of joining. The key priority must be to ensure the effective implementation and the enforcement of integrity frameworks. The OECD's public integrity indicators help us identify the gaps and the requirements for further action. And they show that across OECD countries, they meet an average of 61% of OECD criteria for integrity regulations, such as having strong conflict of interest frameworks. But the implementation rate of those regulations is only at 44%. Enforcement of foreign bribery laws also remains too low. 18 out of the 46 members of the OECD Working Group on Bribery have not yet concluded a foreign bribery case, highlighting a critical enforcement gap. Public trust is another challenge. In the OECD Trust Survey, only 4 out of 10 respondents expect public employees would refuse a bribe. The OECD is helping governments step up their efforts and respond to the evolving global integrity challenges. First, with our evidence-based standards. At our Ministerial Council meeting in May, ministers adopted a revised OECD recommendation on transparency and integrity in lobbying and influence, which provides new guidance on addressing risks such as foreign interference and ensuring responsible lobbying. Second, by supporting cooperation between governments and businesses to tackle corruption. The global initiative to galvanize the private sector as partners in combating corruption convenes members from over 60 leading multinational companies to provide governments with business expertise on issues such as integrity in supply chain due diligence and responsible corporate management. This complements OECD efforts to support governments in countering illicit trade, where the private sector also has a central role to play. The OECD recommendation on enhancing the transparency in free trade zones provides businesses with guidelines and best practices that are designed to help businesses operate ethically and transparently within the global rules-based trading system. Third, by supporting integrity frameworks for state-owned enterprises. Also in May, ministers at the OECD Ministerial Council meeting adopted revised guidelines on corporate governance of state-owned enterprises. Those guidelines set high standards on accounting, disclosure, compliance and auditing, similar to those that apply to listed companies. To ensure integrity and to mitigate corruption risks in this key part of the global economy. Our Compliance Without Borders program provides additional practical support to state-owned enterprises through peer-to-peer exchanges with private company experts. This program has matched state-owned enterprises with businesses across 9 industries in Latin America, Europe, and Asia, and also in Ukraine, where it is helping mitigate corruption risks in the current wartime context. Fourth, supporting policymakers in harnessing data and innovative technologies to safeguard public integrity and enhance law enforcement authorities' investigative capacity. For example, we're partnering with Portugal to detect irregularities in public procurement through artificial intelligence, and with the government of Belgium to enhance audit practices using advanced data analytics. We also facilitate peer learning among law enforcement regarding those innovative technologies with a view to improving their enforcement functions and better understanding how companies use AI tools in their compliance functions. Fifth, supporting developing countries and providers of development assistance in tackling corruption risks, including illicit financial flows, which are a major drain on public finances in developing countries. For example, in Africa, illicit financial outflows are estimated to be larger than official development assistance and larger than foreign direct investment flows. The OECD is developing best practices to tackle these illicit financial flows. Last year, the OECD's Development Assistance Committee issued new policy guidance on mitigating the risk of illicit financial flows in oil commodity trading, including opportunities to enhance engagement with national oil companies and the International Monetary Fund to improve detection of illicit flows in this sector. So in closing, your discussions at this conference have and will no doubt continue to focus on significant and evolving integrity risks in our complex and highly disrupted global environment. But effective international cooperation on the strong foundation of data and evidence and our shared values can and will be a powerful and effective tool to help mitigate these risks and ultimately to help ensure prosperity and democratic integrity across all of our economies and societies. Thank you again for giving me the opportunity to make some observations, and I wish you further a very positive and productive deliberations. Thank you.